course, this is Dr. Nicole Montero of Zen Wanderlust Travel, where our goal is to help you travel the world, find yourself, and live your purpose. And I am so excited. Maybe you saw the advertisement, the announcement earlier yesterday about today's interview. And I'm so pleased to be interviewing a woman that I actually connected with on Instagram. So that's showing you that social media is really a wonderful platform. She's a foodie, she's a food blogger, she's a mother, a wife, and a daughter, a granddaughter, and you'll see why that's important when she tells us about how she developed her love of cooking. So I have Orly from the I'm in a Foodie's Kitchen, okay? So we're going to put the website up, but her blog is In a Foodie's Kitchen. And she was born in Senegal and raised there for half of her life. Moved to Vancouver, Canada with her family about 15 years ago, would you say, right? And she has carried with her the love of her Senegalese culture, the love of cooking and food and hospitality. And it all comes together as she kind of creates her own recipes. And if you go to her blog, inafoodieskitchen.com, you will see that she was able to pick up, just not through a recipe book, but just through observing and being at her mother's and her grandmother's side in the kitchen, just all about Senegalese culture, Senegalese food and cooking. And she, in addition to telling us about her blog and what she does, she's going to give us some tips. So I know a lot of you out there love different foods, specifically African food. And you know, there is a battle about who has the best jollof rice. And I think hands down, people will say Senegalese food is right up there at the top of the list for all of these contests. So I want to welcome Orly to the Zen Wanderlust Travel Channel and to this broadcast to talk about Senegalese culture, Senegalese food, hospitality. I think you're going to tell us about Teranga, right? And everything, how it all comes together. So welcome so much to welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Yes. So why don't you tell us, so you were born in Senegal, and tell us about when you went to Vancouver and what that was like for you.
So we moved to Canada when I was a teenager, and we first moved to another city, Winnipeg. So
Oh,
we got there right in the middle of winter, straight from Senegal, like in February when it's like -40 outside.
uh-huh.
And it was obviously a culture shock, but as a teenager, for me, it was a matter of not wanting to leave Senegal and come to Canada. I was very attached to my family there and my grandfather. We lived with him, so I did not want to move to Canada. So I was a grumpy teenager when we first moved to Canada, and um, over time I made some friends, and now this is my second home because I've lived in Canada as long as I've lived in Senegal now. So
Mhm.
so it's been a transition over the years, and in my adulthood now, I find that I'm trying to reconnect and actually see my culture in a different light, and try to also teach to my son where he's from. And I'm married to a Sudanese man, so
Oh, okay.
having both of our cultures really see how it impacts his life because he's born here. So the last few years has been a lot about learning about myself again as a mother, and what my culture means to me, and how I'm gonna, teach it to my son and my eventually family. So yeah, it's
Wow.
been a journey.
How old is your son?
He's gonna be 2 soon, inshallah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so nice. So how long did you were very connected to your family? It sounds like it was multiple generations. So you had your grandfather and you were really connected to him. When you moved to Canada, was it just your parents that you were with, or did you have siblings?
Yeah, both my parents and all my siblings. So
Okay,
all 5 of us.
okay.
At the time, it was 5 of us. Now there's 6 of us.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it was all 5 of us
Okay,
together.
okay.
Yeah.
So what were the biggest things, like adjustments? What were the biggest aspects of culture shock that you faced in the first year, say?
I guess we did live in a household where we were with our grandfather and an uncle, and so we lived in a household where there was a lot of people around, and now we went to just now living just both parents and the kids, and so that is a transition for a child who is used to having all these adults around them, and now you have both of your parents. Thank God, I'm very blessed to have both of them here with me because a lot of people move to the West on their own. So I'm very blessed now. I understand that, but at the time it was a culture shock for me.
Yeah, yeah. So you went from having a big community to everything in the West, as you said, is isolated, just a like nuclear family, the
Yeah,
parents and the child, and so forth. So,
yeah.
what were the things about your culture, about Senegalese culture, that your family tried to maintain as you all settled in Vancouver?
I think mostly, obviously, the food
Mm.
and the teranga, the just having people over all the time. Eventually, we had a community of friends that are basically family now. That my parents love entertaining, so the weekends were always full of always we going to someone's house or people are coming over, just casual get-togethers or dinners. So we always had that around, which is something that I think is very Senegalese. We love entertaining, having people over, sharing, breaking bread. So that is something that my parents maintain over the years.
Okay.
I think that's part of our culture.
Yes, yes. So tell us about that. What is this? What is this Senegalese hospitality all about? You kind of alluded to it, but tell us about what
From
you.
my understanding, teranga is a concept of hospitality, generosity, and sharing, breaking bread. Because in Senegal, you will find that they call it the country of teranga. So
Okay.
it's very important to be sharing, whether it's a meal or sharing when someone is getting married and actually gifting, that sense of gifting, that sense of sharing community, and
Hmm.
that is something that is very part of the Senegalese culture, and I think that is what is understood under teranga.
Uh-huh.
So that they call it Senegalese teranga. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
how I've seen it, anyways.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that means, like, in regards to food, you don't really people don't just sit and eat alone or go to the fridge and get something for themselves without really thinking about the other people in the house or other people.
Yeah. Yeah, very conscious of everyone else living there. And actually, in Senegal, it's very common to be all eating from one big plate. So,
Mhm.
um, lunch gatherings and dinner gatherings are very. It's a important time of the day. And
Mhm.
so at lunchtime, we all gather around one big plate and share the meal together and exchange and catch up on the day. Dinner time is similar. Breakfast time similar, but people with different schedules and living for work can be a little bit different. But
Yeah.
mostly lunch and dinner are very, always sharing one big plate, one big meal together with the
Okay.
family.
Okay. All right. So tell us about, like, on your blog, you talk about how you would be observing a lot from your mom, but you're named after your grandmom, and people say you got your love of cooking from her. Is she
Yeah.
still living?
Unfortunately, she passed away many years ago now.
Okay.
She is actually she's the matriarch of her family,
Uh-huh.
and she actually moved to Senegal when she was a teenager too. She was born in Vietnam, and
Oh, okay.
she married my grandfather very young, and they started their family, and so. Um, I learned from her. She brought obviously her cultural background into our family, and so a lot of things were around food. Everything she taught her kids, both girls and boys, she taught them about food and cooking. Her love of food. She was known to be going out for dinner, trying something new, and coming home trying to recreate it.
Wow.
She
Okay.
was very much of a foodie, and growing up, I've always heard from my grandfather and my mom how similar I am to her. I've been around her, but not that many years, so a lot a lot of her remembrance is from my mom, my uncles, and my grandfather. So they tell me a lot about how much she loved food. And as I got older, I found myself loving food, and my mom would tell me, "You're just like your grandmother. You're just like your grandmother." Yeah, so that is something that I'm glad I got from her. And my mom has always been someone who called us into the kitchen when she's cooking and she's trying something new. She would get us to like peel the onions and be in the kitchen with her and assisting her in cooking. And it is part of upbringing and part of womanhood
Uh-huh.
um, for me, because I learned so much that way, just in observing my mom, or my mom and her friends or aunts coming together and cooking and having conversations and being around them. And just that culture is something that is still very dear to me. And
Mm.
whenever I come visit my mom, we do that. We still do that to this day. We always call each other like, "What are we cooking today?" Like today, I came with a bunch of groceries because I'm like, "I'm making this today." She's like, "Okay, awesome." So it's always around food, and
Mhm.
we still do the same. And she'll tell me that I'm not doing something properly, and I'm like, "Oh well, but this is my own way of doing it now." So it's been really, I've learned a lot from her, and now like turning it into my own has been also interesting for her to see.
Uh-huh.
So yeah.
Well, that was how we first connected because we were talking, I was on a Instagram live chat with Sabrina, and we were talking about femininity and womanhood
Yeah.
in different cultures, and how, you just mentioned that part of it's not just about food, it's not even just about hospitality, but you're learning about how to be a woman and how to connect with others, how to take care of your own family. So I find that so fascinating. Like, we just talk about food as something that you eat, but you've just mentioned like three or four different purposes that it serves, from culture to transmitting knowledge and learning, who you are and about yourself.
Definitely.
I also think it's interesting your grandma came from a different culture and settled in, and then you were very young and had to go settle into a new culture yourself.
Yes.
So it's interesting that, that cycle continued.
Yeah. Definitely.
Did she talk about what it was like for her to did you hear stories about what it was like for her to settle into Senegal and to be in such a different culture?
Unfortunately, I never really got those stories from her or her siblings that are still alive today,
Mhm.
because she was a lot older than all of them and they were a lot younger.
Okay.
But I wish I had. I wish I had. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so when did you start your blog in a foodie section?
I started my blog. I first started sharing recipes on Instagram about before my son was born, so a little bit over 2 years ago. But
Okay.
I was doing it very casually because just in friends groups on WhatsApp, I would just share like whatever I'm cooking for dinner, or on my personal Instagram page, I would share whatever I'm cooking. And we had like um like healthy Ramadan challenges, and I would share what I'm cooking, and all the time my friends would be like, "Oh, this is really interesting."
Mm,
And in Vancouver here where I live, there isn't a lot of Senegalese, there isn't a lot of African representation. And
okay.
so I slowly started sharing recipes and sharing Senegalese food, African food. And I found that people always found it very interesting and they had not come across it here.
Wow. Okay.
So that's
Is
when
there
I
any,
decided.
like Asian, like I know I was in Vancouver, you see Chinese, you see Japanese, you see like Pacific.
Indian, Pakistani, yeah, Southeast Asian and Asia. So there isn't a lot of African representation or even Black representation to the food atmosphere here. We have like a few African restaurants, but not that many, and it's more East East African foods, or um, Indian families that immigrated to East Africa and
Oh, okay.
have that fusion of food and have a restaurant here. And
Uh-huh.
so I found when I had my son was really like that click for me to just be more conscious of being just representing that where I was here in Vancouver.
Hmm.
And so I was just sharing recipes casually before, just whatever I'm cooking for as a newly married woman, or whatever I was cooking for me and my husband, and just getting around my own kitchen and whatever. And so when I had my son was like, I need to that sense of representation became so much more clear in my mind, and I decided to share that in a blog, um, so that people can get more of a sense of, um, from my point of view, like, immigrating here at a young age, where I have that fusion of cultures.
Mm-hmm.
My family is very diverse. Just having that, the whole blend, of all that, and putting it into my blog, I just wanted to share that with the world.
Wow. Yeah, I love it so much. So what you mentioned that there wasn't people were interested when you started sharing. Do you have you thought about writing a cookbook or publishing a cookbook?
Yeah, I that's one of my long-term
Okay.
goals, hopefully, inshallah. And currently, I'm in the process of writing an ebook,
Oh,
my
okay.
first Senegalese recipes ebook, and
Yes.
sharing that, because I find people around me that don't know about African food find it very daunting to try, very intimidating. And so I want to make it approachable and easy for people to actually make in their own home, when they're, foodies like me and people who like to try different cultural foods, to just be able to make it for their own at home.
Yes. Okay, so that gets me to the question then, what do you think is the biggest misconception about African food?
Actually, I think people just don't know or are not familiar at all. Like, if you look into the mainstream food representation out there, you'll find like Asian food, Southeast Asian represented, French, Western foods. You very rarely see African. Like, somebody told me there is no, like, I haven't seen yet a food chain that is African foods.
Yes, yes.
And that is something that is very unfortunate, because so it's just so underrepresented. I think it just goes under the radar, and I think it's the time that we are living in, with the internet and everyone being able to present forward their own version and represent what they want to see more of.
Yeah.
It's just so much more possible to bring our African recipes forward and share them as valuable as every other cultural foods out here.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, I don't think there's misconceptions, but I think people just don't know enough about
Okay.
African
Yeah.
food.
That's so true. It's kind of like a niche thing. Like if you know,
Yeah,
you know, but like the broader population just has no clue, right?
yeah, yeah.
So what are for people who want to delve, like they want to go to your and what's your Instagram handle?
In a foodie's kitchen.
Yeah, so In a Foodie's Kitchen, consistent with her website, inafoodieskitchen.com. So people who might go, and you have to go to her Instagram page, the pictures are beautiful. When you go, if people were to say, all right, I want to look at her blog, or I'm looking at what she wrote on Instagram, I'm ready to delve in, I'm ready to try it. Like, what are the top three tips or two or three tips that people just need to know when it comes to cooking Senegalese food?
I find in my exploration of just recipe testing and wanting to share the recipes with the world, I found that Senegalese food is actually at its core is very simple,
Hmm.
right? Maybe we have particular ingredients that are local, that are more particular to our cuisines, but I find Senegalese culture actually adapts to a lot of other cooking around us, and we eat a little bit of everything, but like the main Senegalese cooking is all about consuming local foods, local seafood. If
Uh-huh.
you're thinking about all the different meals, thinking about the country of Senegal,
Uh-huh.
the north part of of Senegal will cook food with what they have locally mostly, and the south as well, the east as well. So you will find that the cooking is very local to the region they are in. And obviously, with modern times, obviously there has been lots of adaptation or modern way of cooking meals, or that is more mainstream across the country. But I find it's very simple. And when we go back to the basic ingredients and we take away all those additives that we have been putting into our food, unfortunately,
Yes.
when you go back to the basics, we have all the tastes, all the flavors already there,
Mm,
without needing all the extra, in my opinion, all the extra additives and chemicals that are turning it into something else, in my opinion.
Okay.
But I find it's very simple and easy to attain the taste we are looking for, and the delicious we're looking for in very simple ingredients.
Uh-huh. Like
Yeah,
vegetables, grains.
exactly. Fresh vegetables, um, fresh seafood, um, and the basic garlic,
Mm-hmm.
onion. Like in Senegalese cooking, you will find this in every
I have a
meal.
big thing of onions.
Right?
You have to
Yes,
got it.
garlic, onions, and these are aromatics that you find in other cultures as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you use them into the Senegalese recipes, it just makes it. It's yeah. Senegalese
Mm-hmm.
cooking is very simple. I think it's a lot more simpler than we think.
So it sounds like that's kind of like the original health food, because these days people are talking about local, sustainable, slow cooking, like getting back to basics. And that's been Senegalese cooking all along, it sounds like.
Yes, it has been, and unfortunately, I think locally now there is a lot of that's just my own view of it, but I think there is a lot of additives that are put into our foods now. But
Mhm.
when you look at the times of our grandmothers and at the time of our moms, they used to just go to the market every day and get their fresh ingredients,
Yeah.
right? And my mom raised us cooking only with salt and pepper
So
and
not like
garlic.
Maggie.
Yeah, not the extra Maggies or anything, or if she was making a bouillon to egg for the taste, she would make it for herself from scratch.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think that has really impacted the way I cook as well, because I think when I think about my cooking, I also stick to very simple ingredients, whole spices, and just fresh ingredients. That's really the key.
Okay, okay. And what about timing? So, as I was telling you, I've spent time in Senegal. I've tried to cook Senegalese food. I love Senegalese food. One thing that I've observed is that you have to be patient. That it's like you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to put all this in here and turn the fire up high." It's you have to kind of like let it slowly cook, and that's how the flavors come together. Would you say that's my observation? But would you say that's the
Yes, absolutely. Especially with some of these recipes, the base of the stews
uh-huh.
become with that patience, having the letting the time for the spices and the ingredients to really get together and just create that magic. It's I find Senegalese cuisine makes it extra special because they
Mm.
call it baral, which is just putting it at a slow heat and just letting it bubble away and just get magical. That's one of my favorite parts of cooking when I have the time. I definitely do that.
Mm. Okay, so tell us, what are the top. All right, I have a lot of questions for you, but one of them is like, what? All right, tell us the national dish of Senegal. Like, if somebody says, you know what, I don't know anything about Senegalese food, what would you say? Tell them the national dishes.
The national dish is chebujan.
Uh huh.
Is a rice dish that is made with chicken, no, not chicken, fish broth. So you start with cooking the fish and making a broth with tomato paste
Mm-hmm.
and aromatics like garlic, onions, pepper, and so you are cooking all the elements are cooked basically in this tomato broth. So you start with the fish and then take the fish out when it's fully cooked, and then add in the vegetables and cook them until they are well cooked. Take them out, and then you finally and with cooking the rice in that same broth, so that the rice has all the taste of the fish and the vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that dish super magical. I learned to make it here in Canada,
Uh-huh.
and it took me some time to just like figure it out, having the proper balance of um, flavors and everything. But
Yeah.
once I got it, I found that it's a very simple dish.
Uh huh.
Very simple dish, and it's very complete because you have your vegetables, you have your grain, you have your protein.
Wow.
And I absolutely love that dish. And in Senegal, we make it with extra little side dishes that you can
Yeah,
add to.
you're
And
like tamarind and
yes,
pepper.
those just take it to the next level. It just, yeah, my mouth is watering. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about it.
When is
So
the last time you made chebujan?
It's been a while actually because my husband is from Sudan and he doesn't like um seafood as much. And
Oh,
so I find I'm not cooking as much seafood, so I'm trying to make version of the chebujan
uh-huh.
where he doesn't see, like, because in Senegal we cook the seafood very whole, like you will find the fish whole instead of cooking the fillet. Yeah, you find the head, you find like things obviously like whole, and he finds it intimidating. So
Oh,
so
okay.
I find like maybe I'm gonna make like a maybe a little simpler, just plain version for so that he doesn't find it that intimidating. But
Yeah.
I have not made it in a good while actually. It's been a few months.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, have you learned any Sudanese dishes to cook?
Yes, I've learned mulukia.
Oh yes, I the
Yeah.
green. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And because he's lived in different East African countries, one of my favorite things I was sharing actually in my page is chapati,
Oh
which is
yeah.
like yeah, which is this bread, this flat bread, and it's absolutely delicious. Now I make it at least once a week.
Wow, I wish I could transport you. I had a friend when I was in Botswana. She was trying to teach me, and I wrote everything down, but I find it so hard. Like the things you do with your hands, and I
Yeah.
find it very difficult.
Yeah, it took many YouTube videos, plus my mother-in-law taught me her own way, and then so I had to like keep practicing, and they're never the same. Every single time they're a bit different, and
Yeah.
every time I'm asking him like, so what do you think? Are they getting there? And yesterday I was making, it was yesterday before yesterday I made some, and he told me, I think these are the best you've made yet. So I'm constantly trying to improve it because when I go to his mom's house, I'm like, Mom, are you making chapati today? She knows it's my favorite.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So, one thing I loved about your blog when you introduced yourself is you talked about when you were getting married, you were excited to get your kitchen together and create your meals for your husband and your family. And I just love that because a lot of times you hear, like, especially in the modern context, you hear people like women dreading cooking or it's a burden. Oh gosh, why do I have to do that? So, would you say that that is just coming from your culture and what you observe that, like, you find joy and happiness in it as opposed to it's a burden or it's terrible? Why do I have to waste time doing this?
Definitely, I think it comes also from the culture.
Uh-huh.
And I think in our family, my mom always made the kitchen a gathering place, a fun
Mm,
place to be.
yeah.
Everyone had a task. So it was always a place of gathering the family, always having a good time together.
Uh-huh.
And so when I had the idea, when I moved into my own house and I thought about, oh, I can organize my kitchen the way I want it to be,
Uh-huh.
discover my own way of cooking, and having that time to explore and build my own in my own way. I was very excited about that. Obviously some days we I dread the cooking,
Yeah.
and but the solution I found for that is to meal prep, and
Mm,
especially when I had my son, because we love home cooked meals. I'm a foodie, so obviously I like to eat. I like to
yeah.
eat out. I like to eat in. So everything with me revolves around food.
Yes.
So I had to find a solution on those days when I want my homemade food, but I don't have time. I get organized, and I think my mom instilled that in us as we're growing up. She always made us part of the home organization, and
Mm,
who's cooking which week, and I think that's very much of how I grew up. So every week, like, one of us would cook, so that we are assigned time to cook, so everyone has their turn.
uh-huh.
So thinking about that organization was something I grew up with, and so
Yeah.
when I came into my own home, it was easier for me to transition and do that. And when I found it difficult, I tried to find a solution, like modern solution, millennial solution, right? So,
Yes.
and that works for my family as well.
Wow. So what were like the top things that you had to have in your kitchen when you were, getting your own kitchen? Like what tools did you know you needed to cook your Senegalese food?
I think one of the first thing I got gifted was a big, big metal. how do you call it? I'm just, my mind is
Yeah.
just there's a big pot, like a big
Okay.
metal pot where you can make like a big rice dish in. That
Yeah.
that was one of the first, because in Senegal, in the culture, when you are moving into your new home, actually your mom and her friends, her sisters, and all the women in your family, they gift you actually household items so that you
Mm-hmm.
start your home with having the basics that you need.
Uh-huh.
So I got gifted one big pot that I love. It's a big metal pot, and it just like the way it cooks the meat and caramelizes everything is different, and I absolutely love that. That's one of my favorite tools in my kitchen. Obviously, some sort of mortar to
Uh-huh.
be able to crush like my garlic, onions, because in Senegal, like we that's how we crush instead of putting it in a food processor. Obviously I came to love my food processor but more.
Yeah. But still to get that authentic, like
Yeah,
at least because I use that as well, and it's like it doesn't the processor will be like chopping things, but that
yeah.
crushes it. So
Yeah, yeah. So I have those days where I go back to like I just miss the way of like that's one of the first tasks that you're given in the kitchen when you're young in Senegal is to actually they put the onions and the garlic in the mortar, and it's one of the first exciting tasks that you get to do. So so it always takes me back when I get to do that in my own kitchen. So those are the typical Senegalese tools that I love in my kitchen.
yeah. Okay, so I think that's so like I think that's going to be great for people to hear that you can enjoy that part of your family life, which is cooking, preparing meals, bringing happiness and togetherness to your family. And that I think the key thing you said was like being organized. So instead of getting stressed out, like meal prep or know that you have the right tools or making sure that you have a plan so it's not like all over the place.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, all right, so when people go to your blog, what you have different kinds of recipes, like what should they start with? They might look and be like, oh my God, this all looks so great. Like what would you recommend for a novice beginner that they can start with?
I think that yassa, which is a Senegalese lemon chicken, is one dish that is very easy to start with because it's very the flavors are still familiar maybe, and the process is very simple, very easy, and
Uh-huh.
one of my all-time favorite dishes.
Okay.
Um, Definitely that. Another recipe would be the peanut sauce,
Uh-huh.
and this is something that you find all over Africa in different versions. And I've been loving actually exploring different versions of this dish all over the continent. But the Senegalese recipe that I share on my blog also is very simple, and I share about sometimes in my blog post I share also the story of my memories growing up and how I learned the dish or what I associate with it. So that peanut dish in particular, I'm talking about how growing up we used to get our own peanuts and open them and then actually grill them and take them to the market so they are grinded into the paste.
Wow.
And so we would have like a big tub of 4 liter peanut butter sitting in our pantry. And so we would go through it when it's peanut season, we get that ready and get that stock prepared. And so when I came here, it was a matter of finding good peanut butter, good, just simple
Yeah,
ingredients, with just
pure
simple,
without sugar
exactly.
and all of that. Uh-huh.
Right? The first time I saw smooth peanut butter, I was like, "What is this?" Or like, like it was just so different for me to see like the crunchy, the smooth peanut butter, the sweetened ones. And so cooking, we had to go through the process of finding the simple ingredient, just peanuts grinded, and with some salt, and that's it. And once we found that, that was, like I said, the basic ingredients, simple ingredients, is what makes Senegalese food what it is. And I find once we found that, growing up watching my mom trying to figure out the peanut sauce, because it's one of our family favorite.
Okay.
We make it a lot now, and it's one
Wow.
of my husband's favorite recipes now.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. Okay, I have to confess that's my husband's favorite dish. And I want to send you, I don't know if you saw on my Instagram page, but I wrote a cookbook of like recipes from my travels. And
Yeah.
I do include, I just said West African peanut butter stew. I want you to look at it and tell me, you're going to inbox me and tell me how you feel about it when you look at it. And I cannot wait to get off of here and go to
For
your
sure.
look at yours. And I'm going to be trying it. And I'm not going to tell my husband, but I'm just going to say, wow, this is what I made today. He might. Yeah. Wow. So, is there any, oh, one other thing I wanted to ask you. Have you done any video demonstrations on your Instagram page, or are you moving towards that where like you show people, some of the actual steps?
I haven't done much videos. I think I do cook on my stories.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
used to I used to do cook dinner with me live videos on my Instagram page, and it would be just a way for me. Like at the time, I just had like friends really following me,
Uh-huh.
and so it was a nice way to chat with them and telling them like what I'm cooking for dinner, whatever, and
Yeah.
some little tips that I'm using for my cooking that night. But I
Okay.
haven't done one in a long time, and I'm trying to actually like get the skills and have some more video content on my page
Okay.
eventually. But sometimes like I do stories where I show the process step by step because I think that's one of the things that is intimidating in African foods. And
Yeah.
so I want to make it more accessible. So when they are looking at the recipe on my blog, they can see also on my stories the process and see what it would look like to before they get to the next step.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so that's what I found. That's the one of the ways I found so far. So I hope eventually I'll be making videos.
Okay. And we'll see your YouTube channel go viral. All right. So one other question I had, which oh my God, is slipping my mind now. But when is the last time you went back to Senegal?
I was actually there about 4 years now. Actually, this is going to be 4 years.
Okay.
And it was the first time I went back.
Wow. So
I
what was
was
that
here.
like for you?
It was, it was a journey for me because it was a time in my life where I needed to go and just reconnect with my roots type of thing. And I think it was something that was grounding for me.
Mm,
So it was very grounding to go back to my childhood home because my grandpa still lives there
wow.
and just see it exactly like it was and
Hmm.
just be able to see it in the eyes of like an adult now
Yeah.
and see and go in my neighborhood and just I felt right at home again. I just went around and around recognized all the different paths I used to take and
Mhm.
reconnect with some of the neighborhood friends that are still there. And yeah, it was a very, very nice visit.
Wow.
Yeah, very grounding for me.
Yeah. Are you planning to go anytime with your son and your husband?
Yes, I would love to take them there. I hope soon. We're trying to plan something soon, but
Yeah.
I can't wait to take them there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much. And before we end, I want to put your website. So it's
Yeah.
www.nafoodieskitchen.com. You can also find her on Instagram, same handle, in a foodie's kitchen.
Yeah.
And they can, let me see. Okay, I posted that. So people can reach out if they have any questions
Yeah.
and just want to like show that they appreciate. So I ask everybody who's watching, if you do go to the blog, if you do go to the Instagram page and you make something, why don't you post a picture in your stories and tag her so people can say, okay, wow, I can really do it. I can cook this Senegalese food.
Yes, I would love to see that.
Yes. So thank you so much, Orly. I cannot wait to keep connecting with you.
Yeah.
And if it's not this weekend, sometime next week, I'm going to try your peanut butter stew recipe. By the way, I did make yassa last night. So I cannot wait to write down the steps of what I've learned and see how it compares to you as an expert. And I wish I could transport it and so you could do a taste test. I'm sure
Yeah.
the food is amazing, and I cannot wait to try your recipes.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and definitely let me know how that turns out. I'll be
Okay,
happy to know how it turns out.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And I'll connect with you again. And
All
thank you,
right.
everybody, for tuning in. Once again, this is Zen Wanderlust Travel. We try to expose you not just to travel, but to diverse cultures and make it accessible to you so that you can have a vision. You know, some people say, oh, I want to travel to somewhere in Africa. Well, wow, you can pick Senegal. You can have a vision. You can have a view of the openness and the hospitality that you would experience when you go there. So let us know. Please subscribe to the page, hit the thumbs up sign that you like it, and share this video with your friends if you found it interesting. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.